Past few days in Afghanistan have been tense, but this has been years in the making. We've spent 2 decades and billions of dollars trying to fend off the Taliban. This morning, we're breaking down the timeline. Al-Qaeda had been targeting Americans for years, but the 9/11 attacks on the homeland were a catalyst. The U.S. identified Islamist militant group Al-Qaeda and its leader, Osama bin Laden, as responsible. Bin Laden was in Afghanistan under the protection of the Taliban. September 20th, President George W. Bush demands the Taliban hand over bin Laden. After they refused, the U.S. launched Operation Enduring Freedom, and coalition airstrikes began. On December 7th, 2001, the Taliban regime collapsed. But 5 years later, the Taliban resurges while the U.S. focuses on the war in Iraq. In February of 2009, President Obama authorizes a troop surge in Afghanistan. And 2 years later, U.S. forces kill bin Laden during a raid in Pakistan. But the war continues. Between 2015 and 2018, the Taliban makes gains, controlling nearly half the country. And under President Trump, the U.S. launches negotiations with the Taliban. In February of 2020, the Taliban and the U.S. sign a deal to withdraw U.S. troops in May of 2021. In April of this year, President Biden announced the U.S. would withdraw by September 11th. The Taliban move quickly. They launch an offensive in May. 2 months later, the U.S. abandons Bagram Airfield. The base is ransacked. By August 6th, the Taliban launches a blitz, capturing dozens of regional capitals. Just 4 days later, Kabul is surrounded. And within days, the U.S. embassy is evacuated. The Afghan president flees the country, and the Taliban takes control.
There'll be plenty of time to criticize and second guess when this operation is over. But now, I'm focused on getting this job done.
President Biden addressing the backlash he's getting after a Taliban takeover in Afghanistan. That as a new NBC News poll shows his job approval rating dip below 50% among adults for the first time of his early presidency. According to the survey, 49% of adults approve of Biden's overall job performance, while 48% disapprove. The poll finds just a quarter of respondents approve of his handling of Afghanistan. Right now, Biden is facing bipartisan criticism over the chaos from America's withdrawal. The president decided to pull troops out of the country by the end of this month, but before that timeline even ended, the Taliban overthrew the government. The president says he was told that would not happen, and if it did, it would be later this year. We want to note the NBC News poll was conducted August 14th through the 17th, so before, during, and after Afghanistan's capital city, Kabul, fell to the Taliban. Well, that criticism and chaos overseas comes as here in the U.S. we're seeing a spike in COVID cases. Right now, the country remains divided over whether COVID-19 vaccines should be mandated. The poll finds 53% of Americans approving of the president's handling of the coronavirus. That's a 16-point drop from April. So Biden's approval rating is dipping, but is he solely to blame for what is happening not only in Afghanistan, but also with vaccinations across the country? Joining me now is Chuck Todd, moderator of Meet the Press. Good morning, Chuck.
Hey, good morning, Kristen.
Well, Chuck, one of your guests today is Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who serves on the House Armed Services Committee. On the Taliban's rapid takeover, she said it's not just that people predicted that this would happen. Everyone was warned that this would happen. She blames both the Trump and Biden administrations, but others say the blame started with her father during the George W. Bush administration. So is this just another example of how nothing seems simple or easy when you look at the 20 years we spent in Afghanistan?
Look, I think if the big picture of this, when you start to look at the after-action report of Afghanistan, and the longer we go, I mean, the echoes of Vietnam are there. I'm somebody who's more of a historian on Vietnam since I was born at the tail end of that war. But when you look at all the after-action, boy, when you get involved in nation building, who you're with on the ground, well, this is what happened. And the fact is, once we expanded the operation beyond what it was needed in the moment, which was to go find bin Laden and decapitate Al-Qaeda, once we got into the nation building, then it became one of these impossible cycles to get out of. Because the fear of getting out, if you didn't set up these institutions, the Taliban comes back, Al-Qaeda comes back, and you start all over again. So it was almost as if the nation-building idea started to be pushed by folks who were trying to worry about security first. The bottom line is, whether it was Alexander the Great, the Soviets, and now the Americans, throw in the British too, they've all learned you can't conquer Afghanistan.
On top of Afghanistan, another big topic, the pandemic. It's been only a few weeks since children across the country have gone back to school, and several districts, including here in Georgia, are already going back to virtual learning. Some parents here protesting the use of masks in school. Governor Kemp not issuing a statewide ban on mask mandates, although he has made his views clear on how he feels about them. Today, you're talking with Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona. So what options are there for the Biden administration to balance student safety, personal choice, and the politics of it all?
Well, on one hand, they're getting aggressive. You know, obviously in the state of Florida, while the governor has similar views as the governor of Georgia, said he's not going to get in the way of local decisions. The governor of Florida wants to punish locals that defy the ban on mask mandates. That's where the federal government wants to intervene and sort of fill in the gap there if for some reason funding gets cut. But I think that's the question federal authorities are asking themselves, which is it time to stop using carrots and to get more into the stick game when it comes to encouraging mandates? Federal government isn't going to issue the mandate, but they certainly can encourage mandates in anybody that receives federal funding by essentially saying, you want your funding, you need to be doing a mandate, whether it's on masks or vaccines, whichever the situation it asks for. So in that sense, that's the battery of questions I have for the Secretary of Education, which is how aggressive are they going to get in encouraging vaccine mandates?
Chuck, thanks so much for your time.